And we are live. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the 17th installment of the Finish Line Formula Podcast, where we give you the ingredients to not only get you to the start line, but also to the finish, because we all love finishing. Anyway, we are going to be joined with three of us, and then one of us leaves, and then one of us joins, and then another one leaves. It's a bit of a confusing episode, but you'll understand what I'm talking about in a second. Anyway, cut to the intro.
Damn, we're that close. We're that close to the start of the end, really. But
well, it's 2 weeks from today, isn't it?
Yeah. Jeez, that's
2 weeks
close.
today.
2 weeks from today,
Oh.
and a little special someone here has got a free platform to gloat because he has just done something absolutely goated today. So.
Yeah, let me.
The man himself. You have the floor.
So, I've actually originally, after following last week's podcast, I ended up talking to Will first about this, and then I ended up talking to Cam yesterday about it. But I said to Will on the phone, and this will be a surprise for Nick if he decides to listen, that if I run a sub 39-minute 10K, which we had for the schedule this week. We had a 10K race today, which is Saturday. I would also join Will in trying a sub 3-hour marathon. Do I think I'm going to be able to do it? Still very questionable, but I came in with a time of 38:41, so I'm giving myself permission to go for it. So that's what happened. And for
I have no idea how Cam's doing this, but
doing what?
I mean, going back to your point on us training, this is like week 30 something. I remember maybe 5 months ago, 6 months ago, when I think it was when this block first started, or maybe it was near the end of the previous the pre-marathon block. We had 20 Ks at marathon pace. No, it was a 20K run with 10 Ks at marathon pace. And at the time, I hadn't run a sub 50, let alone a sub 53 minute 10K. And I did that run with Cam. And I remember finishing the 10 Ks and getting the 49-minute 20-something seconds and being absolutely gassed and just like needing to bend over and spew. And now, fast forward to today.
I find that you did do that.
Yeah, and fast forward to today and did a 38-minute, 41-second 10K, which it's just ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Why is it not doing the thumbs up thing?
Yeah. On.
There we go. All love on this podcast.
But
that's it.
Will hasn't run yet, but I am very keen to see what time you pull out of the bag this evening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm hesitating because, man, if I do it, it's probably going to be more crazy than the 3 hour because everything is working against me today. It is one of the worst days of torrential rain we've had this year. 1, 2, it's at the end of the day rather than in the morning. I'm just cracking out all the excuses now in case I don't do it. But yeah, like I'm pumped up for it. It's just
Are you going to go to a track or something? Do you have any like indoor tracks?
Nah, well, this is it. I was looking earlier in the week to see if I could go to a proper the proper track and field track, but the one at Sydney Olympic Park, it's only available for like general usage Monday to Friday, like 8 to 5. So I'm still even unsure now because every single path or loop that I'm thinking I could do, even the flat ones, at a certain point, there's like a sharp U-turn that's going to occur, which I know will slow me down. So I don't know what I could do because I didn't like the previous 10K that I did because there was a big sharp hill in the middle of it. So I don't know. Plus on top of that, the what I had thought of doing, there's a loop here at Parramatta, and there was something I was thinking of doing, but now because of the rain, it's flooding the path. So I don't know. I'll figure it out. But I say all that to say that I'm going to still send it. I'm not cracking an excuse. I'm still going to send it, but we'll see what happens.
Surely at least sub 40. Surely at least.
I reckon still at least sub 40, but fuck, like, dude, I don't know. Because the last PB I did, which was 4:08 per K, it was around this same time of the day, which was like, usually when my body starts to want to fall asleep. So I don't know. I'm almost.
Did you have lunch and stuff? Because I found that I run really good on a semi-empty stomach in the afternoon, but then having a gel before I go out for a run.
Interesting.
That was the first time I took one of those Mortine gels, and I think I had like a 7K tempo, and I felt great.
Interesting. I don't actually have any gels on me at the moment.
Never mind.
What was it? We were in like everything was off today. So, for example's sake, woken up, got the coffee in me. We've headed out to go check out some properties, because Nick and I are moving house, and I reckon I've had in total 800 milliliters of water the entire day, which is a lot less than what I would have had by now. So usually I would be like 2.5, 3 liters in. And I didn't actually eat for the first time until 1 o'clock. And it was relatively healthy food. So just a sandwich with literally just chicken and cabbage on it. And then I had a lamb pie before because it was the only thing I could find that had a bit of meat in it on the way back here. So
we know.
Bro, I'll tell you now, if I do this, that lamb pie is probably a performance enhancing drug because I don't know. We'll find out.
all that lamb pie. God, if I smashed a pie for lunch and then went for a run, my stomach acid would probably disintegrate my entire esophagus.
True that.
Yeah.
I'm almost thinking of having one of the antacids now, but anyway. Oh, jeez.
Maybe even like chuck a hydrolyte or something.
Oh, Nick's here.
Here we go. Sweaty boy.
Have they started?
Yeah, we've started.
What are we up to?
Anyway, see you, Nick. Close my door properly, perhaps. Nice. Anyway, so with that all being said, we've kind of got two variations of schedules here. One being Cameron's, and Sean can do the other one, which is our schedule for the week. Who wants to go first? Who's ready?
Sean can do the honors.
Okay.
Sean, tell us about our week.
I don't have it because I'm on my phone, but I'm pretty sure Monday is always rest. Tuesday, we did 13Ks, 14Ks with 5K, 5 by 600 meters at a 5 kilometer pace. Then Wednesday, we had a 10K recovery, which I had to take a rest on Wednesday instead of Thursday, which was the rest day. Friday, yesterday, 6K recovery. Today, we had 15Ks with 10K race, which big PBs. And then tomorrow morning, we've got 26Ks on the menu, which is, I guess, our last pretty decently long run until race day. So that's our week in review.
That's it. So jumping over to Cam, before Cam speaks, I had no idea what you were doing this week, but all I kept seeing was these crazy distances and times that you're doing. And when I say crazy, I mean relative to the fact that 3-4 weeks ago you couldn't walk. Or couldn't run, I mean. So, yeah.
Actually,
tell us.
I did less Ks this week than last week. So, as usual, Monday was a rest day. Tuesday was a 12K aerobic. Wednesday was a rest day. I then did a race tune-up, which was 2K warm-up, 2K cool-down with an 8K at marathon pace. That was basically to see if we could, how my body would react to not only running in the race shoes for the first time, but seeing how I could hold kind of for that 8K, trying to be around the marathon pace. Ended up doing about a 4:35, which was I was pretty happy with. Corey and Nick were happy to see that as well. Friday was a rest day. And then today I swapped around the Saturday and Sunday. So I ran for 2 hours and 15 minutes today. It ended up being about, from memory, 24.5 Ks. So definitely the longest I've spent on my legs in the last 2 months easily. Was a lot harder than the race tune-up earlier in the week. And then tomorrow I'm planning on doing a 6K.
So I'm gonna freeball this. No,
Yo.
I'm gonna raw dog my training week. I don't have it in front of me. I'm just gonna go off the top of my dome. So Tuesday was 11 Ks with 8 by 100 meter strides. Wednesday was 8 kilometers recovery. Thursday was 19 kilometer MLR. Friday was 8 kilometers. And then today we had 18 kilometers and a 10 kilometer race. That was the worst race. Actually, that was the worst session of my life. We were just talking about that off camera, but that was the worst session of the entire block. I felt like for a number of reasons: food, fatigue, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, 27 kilometers tomorrow for my last long run before we wrap up the last 2 weeks leading into race. My body needs a rest. Anyway, this is going to be all muddled up, but we've got part 2 of my sit down with Corey coming up. We're going to cut to that now. Anyway, hopefully you enjoy this. Let's go. Welcome back to part 2. I'm joined once again. We haven't moved. It's the same location.
Crazy.
We've just stopped the recording and started a new one. But part 2, we're here with Corey. Welcome back. You've been here, so it's like welcome
2
back.
minutes ago.
Anyway, we're going to be getting into the running specifics as a plane goes past, saying congratulations to it's a girl, so congrats to that guy.
Whoever you are, well done.
But we're going to get into the running specifics of injuries and where a physio comes into play. So you know what this guy's about. You don't understand what a physio does, but we wanted to go over the first thing is when and if you should do this at all is run through pain, soreness. My understanding is, and this is a rule of thumb that I've used, is 2/3 out of 10 I kind of roll with. If it's not reoccurring, I can kind of run on. I'm not sure if it's not science. No, don't quote me on this, but it's probably, when should you run through pain, soreness?
I love it. I wouldn't call it the golden rule, but probably
it's Nick's rule.
Probably the bronze rule, in the sense that, no, I would agree. Pain is a ridiculous concept, and I mean, we'd be here all day talking about it. So there's it's so deep, right? But I think everyone who's listening who has felt pain within reason, whether it's running based or not, can obviously speak truth to, if you can, I suppose, build through that pain within reason, it obviously builds resilience and mental toughness, all those other added 1%ers that you just don't get.
Not physical benefits,
right?
Yeah.
There are other added benefits within reason. Don't get me wrong. And I suppose like we were speaking before, I have to have that tightrope of physio to run coach to athlete myself and be like, okay, well, where do you draw the line? But I would agree that the general thing that I suppose, consensus that we give to clients when they are either on a run program or a return to run program as well, post-injury, and we've obviously assessed them and seen them, is that the general guide is, that 2 out of 10 pain. And once we exceed that, does it linger and does it last? I'll sort of, I toil a little bit with the tightrope. Go, well, if it leads to about a 3 or a 4, does it stay around? If it stays around for, let's go at a general guide, let's go a few hundred meters. Okay, that's when we cut the cord. That's not good. Let's pull it there. If it sort of hangs around 3 out of 4, you stop running and then it reduces. Okay, maybe give it another crack and just go for another slow start, and will things move from then on? If it comes back, no,
Cut the cord.
Cut the cord again.
The whole thing with the 3 out of 10 rule is, let's say you're on the conservative side.
Yep.
If you only run when you're a 0 out of 10, you're never going to be running, because
Doesn't exist.
it doesn't exist. Like, even the first couple steps of runs, you kind of feel like a 1, 2 out of 10 of, oh mate, it's just the body warming up.
100%.
So if you're, it's one of those things. If you're on that performance, trying to push the limit, I kind of dabble on that more 3, 4, because you want to get the most out of your body. But it's also, how long are you sustaining that for? And what I mean by that is, if you're always pushing 3 to 4 out of 10s, pain, soreness, trying to push through that for weeks on end, you're going to get injured. That's my understanding, is it's going to be an overuse injury.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're dabbling on the other side, on the other side of the spectrum, on 1-0s, you're just not going to get any better.
Correct.
You're not going to get any better. And
Yeah.
you're never going to see Corey, but you're never going to see the start line, because you're not going to be able to run the 42 Ks anyway.
Yeah.
But where we want to give education to the people out there is there a difference? And I think I've got my own definition for this, is there a difference between pain and soreness? And I'm not sure if you want me to give you where I go with that, first, to kind of give you a lead in, or if you just want to.
It's an interesting question. I'd love to know your opinion.
So pain for me, so soreness is something that is, look, I'm trying. I thought I had this. Pain is like, soreness for me is something that's basically a fatigue thing. So soreness is accumulated fatigue, and then it's resulted in a soreness down the side of the leg, for example. Whereas pain is something that's, I can physically touch and go, oh, that's painful. It's like I go, pain and sharpness are in that same thing. If it's sharp, it's painful. Soreness is something I would consider would be a 3 out of 10 or less.
Sure.
With my running, nothing scientific, but more just like knowing your body type of thing.
Yeah. Not too far off, I suppose, but there are specifics we would look into. So, let's obviously, when we talk running and we talk running soreness, one thing I would look at straight away is if it's a session we've completed before. So let's just assume 10K threshold pace. Let's just keep it simple, right? Have we done a threshold 10K before and felt the same? If we have, and it's just that general, oh, my body's just, like you said, tired, we go to soreness.
Well, let's go to, we'll give them an example, because I actually had some of this. So I did
Let's run with it.
10K. It was ended up being a 10K PB.
Yep.
10K session at tempo pace. Previously, I'd only done 8Ks, but I did pull up with very tight, like Achilles calf. And I kind of was like, obviously knew it was from that.
Yep.
Where would you say that's more pain or soreness?
Well, let me ask you, what did you feel in your calf and Achilles? Let's run it as if it just happened.
What did I feel? It was like, in terms, do you want me to talk about like where?
Yes, tell me. So are we talking at the base of the Achilles or more into the calf, or both?
Bit of both, but mainly in the like I know muscles, but
Yep.
the deeper one. So the soleus.
Yep.
If you don't know, it's the one that you can't really see.
You've got your
Your calf.
gastrocs. Everyone sees your big baby cows on the surface. Your soleus is pretty much a band that sits underneath that.
Yeah.
It really is a stabilizer of the leg. It still attaches at the Achilles, and it obviously helps with loading, shock absorbing, and obviously an underlying power or propulsion aspect of the foot. Okay, cool. So let's talk around Achilles, roughly a little bit soleus. Let's go with that. Type of pain that you felt: sharp, dull, or burning?
It's probably more dull.
Dull?
Yeah.
Cool, dull. So we run with that. Out of 10 on your scale.
So
Out of 10.
while running, it was fine during the 10K session.
Yeah.
I think it was the next morning. It was probably at 5 on
About
the
a
next
5.
run.
About a 5. And how long did that 5 linger for?
It probably lingered. I think it lingered for a couple days, stopped, and then I had a long run on Sunday, and then it was back.
Okay. Was there anything between that day, like that post 10K and the long run? Was there anything outside of running that aggravated it? So let's go going up and down stairs, squatting down, bending over, anything in that sort of realm that you could pinpoint. And it's okay if you can't pinpoint or remember.
I'm trying to think back now.
Yeah.
But the only thing you just during the day, you'd be feeling, you'd stretch it out, and you'd be like, oh, okay, that feels that's the pain there, and that's that dull pain. But nothing really. It was just, let's say, standing, for example. It would kind of make. And I guess I was about to use the word burning, so maybe it was also burning as well. But standing was a burning pain, and then it wasn't noticeable without exercising.
Yeah. Was it localized? Could you pinpoint if I had to pick a spot with my thumb?
Yeah.
Could you go, it's pain here and not here, not here, not here, not
I
here?
would say it's more on the inside
Yep.
of the calf rather than I guess the outside where the hip runs. So yeah, the inside for people who aren't, at least I'm trying to be as descriptive, maybe you might have a better way
So what we would say medial,
Yeah.
but medial just means on the internal surface. So if
I
we're
do want to
looking
use
at
the proper.
if we're looking at your right leg, we're looking at the left side of your right leg.
correct,
So
that's
on
it.
the inside board,
Yeah.
right? So then alone, that location and that little bit of specific Achilles soleus, but then we go that medial portion, straight away my mind goes, okay, maybe it's not exactly soleus. Potentially. We've got other structures that run through there as well. So that diagnosis straight away already goes, all right, could be 3 or 4 other different things. Then you talk about that dully type pain. Is that more bone related? Potentially. It just depends on the level and severity, and there's no need for a full assessment here, but you go straight away, is that pain or soreness to me? That there already is pain.
Yeah.
That specificity, I suppose, that more distinguishable level of explanation, that's not just soreness. Something, for whatever reason, is tweaked, didn't like, I suppose, in the subjective way in where you've gone, oh, you've always done 8K and you've done 10K. Was the 10K too soon, too quick?
I wouldn't say it was
Potentially.
that.
Most people wouldn't, but potentially, right? The body knows move and it doesn't know why it's doing it. And it might be that, yes, you could achieve what you wanted to, but the body wasn't at 100% for you to achieve it.
Yeah.
So you go, all right, we cop the little, let's call it a little bit of pain and a little bit of, I wouldn't even go as far as calling it injury, pathology.
Yeah.
You go, okay, we ride with this for a couple of days, but that's okay because we've got long run coming up and we can deal with that then. If that brings it up even more again, okay, we go, this is a little bit more than just soreness. What's going on? And then you go down that rabbit hole of potential injury. Okay, rehab, prehab, exercises, stretching, whatever that looks like in an adjunct to that.
Because that session there, it was programmed I think 2 weeks before was the 8K.
Yep.
And then it was the 10K. And it was more, one, you have it programmed, but two, you've just said you'll get through, how do I put this? You're going to be pushing that limit. In this type of block, you kind of want to be, and we were kind of taught this in our degrees, especially at that elite level where you're trying to push, you do want to be kind of veering over that overtraining. I think it's, you don't want to be overtraining too long because it then leads to injury, but you do want to be pushing the limit because if you're not pushing that limit, you are going to improve.
Yeah.
So that was one of those sessions where I was willing to cop the
2 days of
2 days of
potential soreness, a little bit of pain.
that maybe if I had another session too soon, if you have bad programming and you got a session 2 days later and you go, okay, well, it's programmed in my thing, I'll have to do this.
Yep.
It might have been something more.
Yep.
But good programming, awareness of, I guess, your own body. And it goes back to the first part of this where we said, you probably could tell now that was probably 4 weeks ago, so I can't really remember the pain is. That's why you need to be writing stuff down in the notes. 'Cause
proactive.
let's say I'd finished, let's say that was 2 days ago, or even I'd just run that this morning. If I had a couple of notes in my phone about the pain that I was experiencing, I probably would have been able to give even more detail. So that was just
100%.
like an example of, it did serve two purposes. The second being that it gave you guys awareness of why you need to understand your pain and soreness in your body in the moment, because it gives you a lot clearer indication of where things are going.
And even just like we said, with the basic line of questioning, we went from your pain was potentially in your calf, and then you've gone, oh wait, no, it was actually medial, to potentially being in the realm of tib post, or it's another complete different muscle group that has a whole different other function, where then we can break it down in your running and be like, well, if you felt it at the end of your run, that's less likely to be this, because if it was calf, you'd feel it during your run. All those other different, and all it was one question that sort of made you think, oh, it's actually not exactly where maybe this was at when I first felt it. It was a little bit internal.
Yeah.
And that changes the whole perspective on things.
Corey's going to be sending me an invoice after this.
Absolutely.
Anyway, so hopefully that gave you a bit of understanding of like pain, soreness, the 3 out of 10 rule. I want to switch the gears a little bit. We're going to go from a 5-minute pace to a 4-minute pace.
Love it.
If we're going to use running analogy.
Now you're talking to me.
Maybe it's not full. I don't know how to. I'm trying to think of it anyway. Whatever. We're going to talk about, I guess, different modes of treatment. And one thing I want to touch on is dry needling. I know a lot of people, and I don't really have a question behind this, but it is one of those things that you go to a physio. I'm not, like, if you haven't been to a physio, sometimes they pull out needles, sometimes they don't.
Yep.
Most physio I go to, they go, oh, needling, and I've had needling before, so I know what's going on. And I'm just, they go, pull out needle, like, what are they doing? They got these needles, what are you doing? You about to stick these needles into me?
What's going on?
Am I getting a, I was just trying to think of a joke with vaccinations or something, isn't it? Anyway.
Nonetheless, someone's poking something in you that you're not too sure why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if a physio has explained it to me, but if you're apprehensive about needling, do you do needling?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, well, perfect. I was going to say, that's probably the first place we should have.
Yeah, that would have been real awkward if I'm not qualified, right?
Yeah.
So, well, first and foremost, to be a physio that needles, it's extra study and extra coursework as well. You don't just do your 4, or like I did 6 years of study and then end up, I can poke and prod people. It's so much of a deeper science than people think. And is quite different to what people, I suppose, would call their standard acupuncture as well. It is quite different in that sort of regard as well. So first thing you do with any client is you make sure that they're obviously willing to be needled. Like you said, some physios just sort of, instead of checking that first, they sort of go, this is what I want to do. And it's not that it puts pressure on the client. Within reason, it does though, because it's sort of like, physios forget that they're the ones that have the power within reason, right? They're the one that has the degree and the qualifications and the understanding that you're willing to obviously spend the money to see.
Yeah.
So most physios will go, well, I'm in charge. And they'll go, well, needling is what I would do if I were you. So that's what I'm going to do. First and foremost, client needs to be on board. That's number one. Then you check all the basics, like, are you allergic to metal? People physically can't get needled because they're allergic. All those other, I suppose, red flags that you want to rule out, and contraindications that you want to get rid of straight away, first and foremost. Then you need to make sure that what you're getting needled can actually be needled by the physio who's doing the needling. There are levels to needling. You can get needles through the face. You can get them obviously around your pelvic floor area and your groin area as well. you've got to be qualified to do that. And if you're not, don't break the law. And your client's not going to know that. They're just going to see physio needling. I can get whatever I need done needled. And it's not always the case. So double check all those boundaries first. And then, yeah, like you said, most physios, I suppose, nowadays don't really explain needling in the sense. And it is, even for someone like myself and every other physio who does needling, it's still a hard thing to, I suppose, be able to explain without, one, talking for 40 odd minutes, and two, also leaving out all the juicy science behind it. But at the end of the day, the way that I explain it, I suppose, is such a simple way, is everyone obviously understands that it's a needle that's going inside you. There are different gauges and different lengths for different body parts. That's rule number one. We put in the right needle in the right spot. Your calf muscle and your hamstring muscle, very different muscles, so they require a very different needle, first and foremost. Like any needle, you'll feel pressure, so that you'll feel that pressure go through. But if we do a few deep breaths as we're needling and we do it at the right time, you almost don't even feel the needle go in.
Because they start moving it.
Yeah, until they start poking and prodding. And that's, I suppose, the next thing that people always ask the question about is, why the hell are we doing that? So needling and dry needling, in the sense, as opposed to acupuncture, is the point is for muscle-based therapies. So we're looking at actually getting into the muscle itself. So let's say,
belly.
Yeah, so we're looking at the belly of the muscle, right? So let's go simple with your calf. We're going in through to the calf. There's certain portions of the calf muscle that will usually tend to feel tighter, or I suppose have more susceptibility to knots, just based on the anatomy of the calf muscle.
Yeah.
Everyone's a little bit different, but more often than not, you've got the same 4 or 5 points. You have a bit of a feel, you palpate through the muscle before you even open any of the needle casing, and you have a feel and you go, okay, this is where we're tight, this is where we're tender. If it's safe to needle, we make sure that we obviously glove up, we make sure that there's no like fresh tattoos or anything like that, right? We got to make sure that it's a clean canvas. And the needle itself, what we're doing is we're going through the dermal layers of the skin and through that into the muscle tissue itself. Now, without getting too finicky and too sciencey around it, we all have knots that can build up in our muscles, right? Essentially just from using them. That's just stock standard.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. So what we do, I don't know if you ever remember when you were younger and you got a knot in your shoe, and it was that bad where you couldn't either pull it out with your teeth or anything. So you had to get like a toothpick or a pencil or something that had a little bit of a sharper edge, like a needle. When you've got that knot in your shoelace, what you're doing is you're poking that needle or that pencil right into the middle of that knot, and then you're trying to pull it out. And that's essentially, at a very, very basic level of explanation, what we're doing. We're having a poke and a prod, and obviously our understanding of the body comes in behind that, and we know what we're looking for. We don't need to dive into that. We know what we're looking for. We find our spot, give you a little bit of a needle, then we do what we would call is threading. So we're actually poking the knot, irritating it, and giving a little bit of muscle tearing the muscle ever so slightly. It sends blood cells, red blood cells, all that good stuff that we want to an area to increase circulation and help with recovery and rehab, which is what we want. Sends all those good things there to help with that phase. But also what it does is helps pull that knot out and disperse that knot across the muscle belly, so that we obviously don't feel the tightness that knot provides. The tighter the knot, sometimes a little bit more threading is needed. Obviously, the bigger the muscle belly, sometimes you need 4, 5, 6, whatever needles across the span of the belly. Every patient presents differently. Some patients love needles and they go, load me up, I don't really care, fire away. Some are just like, no, I only want a couple. I just want to see what it feels like, and then maybe we'll go from 3 to 4 needles. And then next treatment, maybe it's 5 and 6, whatever that looks like. And that's purely fine. There are a lot of different, I'm dry needling and acupuncture trained as well. So there's still acupuncture points through the body that help reduce what we call extra segmental effects. So like brain, mind, muscle connection effects as well, that just help reduce pain at a basic level. So it's funny, like I'll have someone come in for needling and we'll put maybe 3 or 4 in the calf and a few in the hamstring. Let's go with that. And then we'll do a couple in the web space of their thumb and finger. Yeah. And that's a really big acupuncture point to relieve pain and stress. So that there alone, when anyone feels any sort of injury, doesn't matter who you are, comes a level of stress. you can sell me on the fact that you don't, but you do. It doesn't matter who you are. There is a level of stress, very minimal for most, but they go, oh, I can't do this and I want to do this. Usually that comes a very low level of stress. We can reduce that by needling on top of the physical effects that we do in the calf, the hamstring, wherever the pain and that tightness is felt.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more than just poke a needle in and let's go for gold. There's physical, localized effects, extra segmental effects, and it's a full, all-encompassing treatment modality as opposed to let's go in for 20 minutes, get poked and prod, and we'll feel a little bit stiff after the end of it. We can't run the next day, but we'll feel better on the weekend.
And that's actually, it's probably better I did not have a question to ask, because that kind of gave me, that's a good analogy, that whole shoelace one. Yeah. Because it kind of, I guess for listeners out there, if you to visualize that, it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, 100%.
And if you're apprehensive about the needles, because there's probably two sides thing. People go, oh, the needles cut. Obviously, it's going to be sore and painful. It's not. It's a weird, like for me, it's a weird sensation. Getting needled. Like it feels very nervy, and then you kind of have referral pain goes down the leg. For example, if you get needled, where have I been needled that I've had that, like lower back? I'm trying to think more, like for example,
through the glutes.
Yeah, I was thinking glutes, and then it just shoots down the leg. So it's the first time getting needled is weird. Like,
100%.
For the people out there, it's, but hopefully Corey's just explained the benefits of it all, and you'll be booking in with him in the next 5 minutes and
hopefully
getting needled.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one that people, I suppose, take a few moments to get used to.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've had a client yet that has been needled, and then when they come back for the next session, they go, "Nah, I don't want to do that."
Yeah.
Almost always they're prepared to feel, I suppose, because like any sort of treatment, when it's deep tissue and we're working on, I suppose, specific muscle belly like work and all those sort of things, you're gonna feel a little bit sore afterwards. Like if you got a deep tissue massage at whatever parlor in the middle of whatever shopping center.
Might have some other things sore as well.
But you know what I mean? You're gonna feel quite sore.
Yeah.
So like, don't feel like, oh my God, I've just put myself in a world of pain, because it's not. It's just you've got treatment. You're gonna feel a certain type of way. Get used to it.
Another modality.
Yes.
I'm not sure if this is a modality, but using ice.
Definitely a modality. Hot and cold therapy.
I'm thinking more of the classic,
throw an ice bag on.
Get some peas from the freezer. Where do you see, because I know that has changed, I guess the application of using ice has changed. Like I know during my junior degree doing sports science, they kind of drilled into us. There was one way to do it 20, 30 years ago, and now that's
the
kind
old
of changed.
The old rice model.
Yeah, and that's kind of changed. Where do you see that being useful from a physio point of view?
Yeah. So, I mean, you guys obviously know that I work in the running space, but I also work in the footballing space. So I'm a team physio for a local football club as well, and rice is almost hummed into everyone's brain of, if I hurt myself on the footy field, rice is the way to go.
Yeah.
So rest, ice, compress, elevate. Mr. Whippy's back.
Anyway, Mr. Whippy just went past one more time, collecting all the children's and their money.
So we're talking obviously about the rice model, and obviously ice as we call a modality or a treatment type or a way to help with an injury, right? So it, like you said, it's definitely been controversially up in the air, I suppose, over the last recent years of, I mean, I should know his name, but the guy who came up with the RISA model now doesn't believe in the RISA model, which is kind of interesting, but that's what research and evidence-based practice should lead you to in some way, is always contesting theories, and he now believes it's not the way to go. My opinion is, when we're working in sport, you'll always have injuries that are what we call like trauma or incident based. So you run, you've torn a hamstring, whatever that case is. You're on the footy field, you get a tackle, ankle's gone. immediately within reason, you're going to have a level of swelling and I suppose apprehension from the body to be like, oh, something's gone wrong. Let's try and fix it.
Yeah.
And that's usually going to happen. Whenever there's swelling, ice is always a great modality to help reduce that. But swelling is also something that can help the body because let's put it this way. If you go do your ATFL on your ankle, so just one of your ligaments in your ankle swells up. Well, let's assume, it doesn't swell up. Everything looks good and you go, oh, nothing's wrong with it. And you go to take another step and your body doesn't tell you that you shouldn't be taking a step because it hasn't swollen up. And you go do that and then go, oh, there goes PTFL as well. And you've got more damage. So swelling can act as a warning sign to tell you that something's wrong. You don't want it to hang around too long though.
Yeah.
And that's where ice comes in and I suppose it's such a tricky thing and the gray zone and it depends and per client, per whatever. But ice can be a good treatment, but it's not the bread and butter, I suppose, of what we want to just use as the old magic sponge. Like, oh, you do it and you'll be fine, get up and go and you'll be okay. It definitely has its role to play and it definitely has, I suppose, a part in practice still, in my personal opinion. But to just have someone come off injured, let's say they're running the marathon and quad goes, throw ice on it straight away. Is that necessarily the only thing you should be doing is question number one, and two, is that the first thing you should be doing? And it is very patient specific. So it's a tough question to, I suppose, give you a clear cut answer.
Because I had shin splints in my first marathon block and after every run I would use cling wrap and a thing of ice on the shin. And I did that more for like pain relief sort of thing. Like I put it on for 20 minutes as soon as I could finish run, more for pain relief. Because I noticed that if I didn't do that, there would be like that. If you've ever had shin splints, it's just this lingering pain, dull, just like boo, boo, boo. If you've had shin splints, you'd know what I'm talking about. And it would just kind of relieve that because I don't know the science exactly behind it, but it would be cold and you'd feel more. It was more cold than it was painful.
So what ice does is two things. It has what we call a proprioceptive reaction. So a feeling in which the body feels something. So if I touch you, boom, you've got a proprioceptive reaction, and that's just touch. So the ice does that, and it gives you, I suppose, a way for your brain to switch up and go, oh, we've got something else to think about and something else to worry about, right? Oh, it's cold. Same as you touch the stove. Oh, the brain's going straight to the stove. So it changes your mindset. There's obviously science behind this, but it changes your mindset to go, oh, there's something else to worry about as well. But not only that, the effect that ice has on the body, it helps with a numbing effect. So same as you have the green whistle and it numbs your pain, ice has that same sort of, at a lower level, similar effect where you don't necessarily feel the pain. And you can have, and it's so interesting, you can have pain without loss of function, and you can have loss of function without pain. Like the two don't necessarily have to exist together. Like you can have a sore ankle and walk on the ankle, or you could have no pain in the ankle but not be able to walk on it either. But like you said, for that very what we call the acute phase, so the 0 to 48 72 hour-ish phase of post-injury, ice in terms of reducing pain, great asset to have. Then there's always little rules around it. Don't apply direct to the skin because you can obviously burn your skin. Ice can burn you just as much as heat can. Don't necessarily apply it for too long. So general rule of thumb, 15 to 20 minutes. Not too often throughout the day. So, I mean, we can say every hour on the hour for 4 to 5 hours. Some use that rule. Some go every 2 hours for the totality of the day, whatever that looks like for you. And at the end of the day, if I told you to go ice it, but you're like, well, man, I got to go work 8 to 5. And I can't sit there with an ice pack every hour on the hour. It's like, well, do what you can. Right? Because at the end of the day, I think people forget whether you're a runner or not. You've got a life to live. You can't just stop.
No, running's life. If you're Cody Adams.
You can't stop going to work and doing all those certain things.
We can cut it.
I'm well aware. But you've got to do what you need to do, right, to get through your day. You've got food on the table, a roof over your head you got to take care of. But you just filter in those you filter in those modalities where you can, like you said. Yeah.
Nice. Shout out to old mate. So, a little bit of a fun one. Has there been an injury that stumped you? And this question kind of came up because I had an injury that kind of stumped a physio that I was dealing with, and he sent me off to the sports doctor and it was sorted. But is there any injuries that you've gone, I didn't think of that, and then down the line you've kind of worked out, after diagnosing it originally, or that's probably, I don't know if you can go into that.
Yeah.
Or maybe a physio that you've had conversation with, we don't know clients, we don't know, some random imaginary
made up clients that I don't know of that I've worked with in the past. In all fairness, like, I wouldn't say there's been anything that's like stumped me in my tracks, but there has been, I suppose, a few clients that I've had in the past, and one that I'm currently with as well, where it's the level of, it doesn't scream this injury, but it can potentially be this as well, or in adjunct. And it's kind of like, how do I give you the best of both worlds to treat either and to treat both? And it's so finicky at some points in, I suppose, rehab stages for people, is because it's like, let's go hip and knee. And it's like, well, they have a relationship together. Hips and knees always work together. But it's like, okay, if the hip's in pain at this stage, and let's go running specific, if the hip's at pain at this stage, what we need to do, reduce that, is to do X, Y, Z. But if we do that and that increases knee pain, well, what do I need to do outside of running to help reduce the knee pain so that we're not able to do that, so that the hip pain's reduced when we run?
Because it's a bit of a balance.
Oh, it's always a balance. And it's such a, at times it can be such a fine line, where you almost sit there and dream and you go, at times you go, I wish it was clearer, just one thing going on, which might be worse, but it means that you can obviously have more of a clearer indication of how to fix it.
Yeah.
But in terms of anything that stumped me off the top of my head, it's going to sound bad because every physio has, I suppose, a client that's always kept them up at night and had you thinking, what else can I do? And why did I not do this? Or why did I not do that? But nothing, I suppose, like at the top, or I suppose the clearest part of my mind goes that. You've always got the tricky ones. ITB is always going to be a headache for any physio. Doesn't matter how experienced you are, it's always going to be a nightmare to handle because there is, like we said, a handful of things going on. I suppose the trickiest things to deal with is pain in relation to function. That's what I would say in terms of any injury. When someone comes in and they go, let's go, I've got 4 out of 10 pain, right? And you go, okay, you're on the border, but not sort of where we want you to be. I've got 4 out of 10 pain, but when I run a 5K, I feel pretty good. When I run a 10K, hate it, can't do anything more. I've tried to do a 15K and I feel great. And you go, why the hell is the 10K run the issue? What's happening on the 10K run that's the problem? And then you've got to go dive deeper in yourself as a coach and understanding running more specifically is go, well, the 10K run was at this pace and this cadence and all the other, I suppose, factors that you take into how you run. Maybe that's why we're getting the pain there, because we're running at a 5-minute pace as opposed to a 6-minute pace. Yeah. Or the quicker we run, the less steps we're taking. So we're not putting as much load through the body. Maybe we're not feeling it as much because we're taking less steps because we're just running quicker. And all we've done is increase the speed. Nothing's changed mechanically, but just running quicker means we're taking less steps most of the time. So we're putting less. So when you're running quicker, you take less steps, and then potentially putting less load through those structures that are effectively injured or feeling pain. So that would be the tricky part, is especially running specific, which is where I absolutely love it because, like I said, it sounds bad, but it keeps me up at night. It keeps me thinking. It keeps me always wondering, and I suppose always thinking, what else can I be doing? Is just changing something as easy as steps per minute. Does that alter the way that the knee flexes at this position of our gait cycle or our running cycle? And that's going to relieve stress on the hip, which means less compression of the ITB. Boom. We've got some sort of result. And just figuring out, I suppose, that piece of the puzzle is always going to be the trickiest part. But it's not like any one injury goes, shit, that's the issue. Because injuries are like math problems. You can have the 2 + 2 = 4 and that's fine. But as soon as you put it to a multiplication sign, it might be just as easy, but it's a different way of figuring out the problem.
Yeah.
And the end result still might be 4. Just as much as it's 2 × 2, whatever, right? The end result still might be the same, but the way you had to think to get there and the piece of the puzzle you had to put in place to figure out what's going on changes everything about it.
And that's good.
The tricky part.
And I guess a lot of people who are listening to this won't understand, like you go to a physio, you tell them what your problem is, they tell you what to do, and that's it. You probably don't hear this side of things, and I guess that's why we want to have this episode to open you, even my eyes and I guess ears as well, about the understanding of physios. And you've touched on the ITB. We want to get into, I guess, running specific injuries. I kind of want to go over high level overview of why this X injury develops, early signs, management. We could start with ITBS. I know you've said that it can, if it's ITBS, it could also be a multitude of other things.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to, this thing's in the way. So I know it can be a multitude of other things. So start that how you will. Injury, how does that develop? Early signs and management. It does have to be too in depth.
Pure basic, pure simple. Yeah. So ITB or iliotibial band syndrome, obviously located on the lateral or outside portion of hip down to your knee, runs through what we call, it's one of my favorite parts of the body called Gertie's tubercle, just a little uni story behind that, but nonetheless.
Probably throw up a picture.
Yeah, there'll be some sort of insert there.
Picture right here.
Worst case, if you ever want to look anything up, Physiopedia is the go-to for any anatomy-based stuff.
Not to be replaced by...
to be replaced by the real thing, but for just any understanding of where things are in the body and location, insertions, all that other fun stuff, Physiopedia is always the go-to. But yeah, ITB, obviously, it's, I suppose the feeling most people have is either a compressive or tight feeling around the femur or the top of the hip bone there on the outside portion of the hip, or they get the lateral knee pain as well.
Yeah, that's what I had.
Yeah, and that's what most people will have. Not only, obviously, does the ITB run from hip to knee, but because the knee sits between the hip and foot, the knee takes in a lot more of the pressure than the hip does, just automatically just being in the position that it's in. Most of the time, the first thing I'll look at with ITB, outside of the subjective, so type of pain, all those other things, when you've got an idea that it's potentially ITB, is we look at, especially with runners, is just the mechanics of their running.
Yeah.
Most people complain, and you might be able to, I suppose, confirm this in a way, but most people complain that the pain they feel is when they land, or they're going into, I suppose, what we call that stance phase, when you're going through into a step. So when you're putting pressure through it, and it's usually at a position of knee flexion. So when your knee's bent at around 30 degrees. So depending on the way you run, well, that might be at a different phase of your running mechanics. But more often than not, it's not once you've had the step, it's when you're going into the step where you feel that pain. And it's the loading, I suppose, mechanism of actually putting your foot down that just heightens that pain ever so slightly above average and just increases each step you take.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Because when I was diagnosed with ITBS, it was funny because I did like a leg day session at, let's say, 4 o'clock. Mm-hmm. And then at 6 p.m. I went for a run, and the run was fine, continuous. Cool. But then I got stopped at a set of lights a kilometre from home, went to take a step after the light went green, and I couldn't walk. And it just like stopped like that. And I was like, I literally had to hobble home. Yeah, I couldn't run. It was that painful. But it wasn't painful at all for the entire run. But as soon as I'd stopped for about, let's say, 30 seconds, as soon as I went to put pressure on it in that, like,
that little step phase,
boom, shooting pain up the... I couldn't actually even... You probably found if you're injured, you can kind of like hobble yourself. I couldn't even do that to walk all the way back. You might be able to go into that, but or we could just move on to next injury. I just want the...
No, that is an interesting one, and it's such a tricky thing because, like, obviously, in hindsight's a wonderful thing. You can go, oh, maybe this, and this.
Well, I know what I wouldn't have done. I wouldn't have done a heavy gym session prior to running.
Yeah, and I mean, if I was your coach back then, I would have told you not to do that anyway. Yeah. But I mean, we learn from
live and you learn.
Yeah, we live and we learn, and we do things. And I'm not opposed to, I suppose, running sessions post leg session, but it depends on the leg session. Could be too heavy, too hard.
Yeah,
could have come off a 5-week block of intense running. Like this,
and this was
right.
This was pre uni degree, so I didn't actually understand concurrent training, and if you're going to do some sort of, I guess, aerobic based session with the gym session, you don't want to be doing heavy loads, high reps.
Yeah.
You kind of want to do more of that explosive stuff, which is what I didn't do. But anyway, enough about me.
So much into it.
Next one, biggie. I've experienced these. We touched on this as well. Shin splints.
Shin splints?
I'm just trying to think because, I was like one of those people running. I didn't get shin splints till later on. Where it's like, oh, I'm never going to get shin splints, and then I got them. And you kind of know about it.
Yeah. Shin splints is a very interesting concept. First and foremost, what you want to do, if you have anyone, I suppose, that has or discusses shin-based pain, is, like I said, I always try and work down top to bottom and think, could it be a stress fracture? Straight away, you go, what are we sort of feeling? What are the signs and symptoms to rule in or rule out of a stress fracture? My general two that I go to is the type of pain. So if it's a sharper, I suppose, type pain, usually it's more muscular based. That's the general rule of thumb. And if it's like pinpoint localized. So if there's a fracture, more often than not, you're going to be able to poke on it and it's going to hurt. And it's going to hurt a lot. Shin splints, because we're talking more muscular based, we're probably going to be able to have a little bit of, I suppose, what we call palpation or touch and feel across that shin muscle and across that area where we're getting a little bit of irritation, a little bit of not heightened pain, but more than the general, right? General of thumb, from what I've read in my research, this could be, I suppose, just what I've read, but what's out there too is around a 10 centimeter, I suppose, feeling of palpation. If that's pain, then we go, okay, it's more likely to be a shin splint based injury.
Yep.
Now we look at, I love shin splints, it's so fun. Then we look at what's going on, because in the shin, or obviously through the front portion of the leg, you've obviously got the tibia, so that main bone, the shin bone. We've got a few different muscles that lay on top of it, behind it, around it. And I suppose what most people will do is go straight to the big point of, got to be shin splints. This is where my pain is, it's got to be shin splints. But they forget to think that you've got a muscle called tibialis posterior, which sits aligned with the shin, but not, I suppose, at that front portion of the shin. And you could have a flare-up of tib post, because I think I know about 3 people to ever train strength for tibialis posterior, ever. And the only reason they did it is because they had flare-ups and injuries of it before as well. So to just go that shin splints, there's a few different things you need to dive deeper into, I suppose.
And we can cut this if this is completely wrong, but my understanding of what shin splints are was that muscle, it might be the
tibialis anterior, the one on the front,
anterior, is pulling, because it's attached, the sheath is attached to the bone, and it's pulling, and that's actually what's happening.
It's like a compressive, I suppose you would call it, a compressive type injury. Usually
the posterior, sorry to cut you off, is internally. It's like you can't, it's one of those muscles that it's deep.
Yeah, it's like the soleus.
Yeah.
It's like the soleus of the
actually poke
the gastro. No, you can through the, I suppose, the internal border. There are ways in which you can through there, but to go deep down to get tib post, no.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that it's not playing an effect in what's going on at the end of the day. So you can run a few different tests, needle walls and palpation tests and all those sort of things. But the way that I suppose I look at it is, whether you call it this, that, or anything else, will the management of it change? Usually the first thing you do with shin splints or shin splint based type injuries is obviously pull up, take some time off,
Deload.
rest on the legs, or like you said, if we're talking 100k week type runner and those sort of things, maybe it is like what we call a deload. So you just pull off the legs a little bit, reduce some of the strength exercises and intensity in the gym, and you just sort of track those changes. You be proactive, like we've said, and you track those changes. And then it more comes down to, I suppose, management. So making sure we don't progress too fast, too quickly, too much.
Yeah.
But also adding in, I suppose, those other modalities or treatments that we talk about. So if it's compressive and we've got tightness through there, we can do needling through tiband, through tib post, through those other structures internally, foot through the base of the foot, those other ligaments through there as well, and do a little bit of work through there just to help reduce stress and tension in those muscular based, I suppose.
Because that's exactly what happened with me. I had let's say I had shin splints for 8 weeks.
Yep.
We were needling, icing. Obviously, you're doing the strength. I think I'm probably one of those people that did tibialis posterior exercises. I think it was like the band where you twist it sideways. Is that the one where you touch to like the
the inversion? Inversion.
So I was
stuff.
doing all that stuff, and it probably stayed about a 5 or 6 for those 8 weeks. And as soon as taper happened, it just went away. As soon as taper happened, it went away, and I haven't had shin splints since.
Yep.
Like they've, to the extent that I haven't been able to run or had that pain run. Like I've been, like even now my calves tight, I can push on the shin, it's a bit sore, but not to the point where I'm noticing it during run. So yeah, everything you've just said is what I went through, and confirm my physio down in Sydney, he was doing a good job.
Hell yeah, good to hear.
So next one, runner's knee. I looked into this. There's actually 2 types, and there's 2 types of running knee injuries that I'm thinking of, but runner's knee, I forget which one it refers to, because there's
Patellofemoral
pain, and then there's what's the other one? Patellofemoral pain. I'm just trying to think which one. There's 2.
Most people will go patellofemoral pain and then patellar tendinopathy.
I think that's the 2.
That's usually the 2 that most would assume.
And I didn't really
laid together.
Yeah, and I didn't realize they were different. Like under the runner's knee band, I didn't realize they were different. So if you wanna...
at a basic level, acute versus chronic.
Yeah.
Patellar tendinopathy is a long-standing base injury that's obviously, general rule of thumb is 3 months or more.
Yeah.
That's the usual guideline, the golden rule that they'll say.
Yeah.
Like I go back to that same thing, treatment and management, relatively similar. It's just, I suppose, the level in which you factor in your exercises and the intensity of that.
So where would you, like for people out there, where would you feel that if you're like, what's runner's knee, where would you?
So runner's knee through the front portion, or what we call the anterior portion of the knee, we've obviously got that funky little patella, so the kneecap that sits on top of your knee. So it's actually not your knee, like the patella isn't actually your knee. It just is a cap on that sits on top of it.
Yeah.
And it has two big tendons that attach to it. So you've got your quadriceps tendon and your patella tendon. So your patella tendon runs down, your quadriceps tendon runs up towards your quads. Patellofemoral pain is it sits, I suppose, in that tendon area, just shy or just below the kneecap itself, leading into that femoral space.
And if anyone's at home, if you're sitting down, because I'm feeling it now, if you're sitting down, listen to this and run your fingers over your kneecap, and then there's that tight band. It doesn't really move, like your kneecap doesn't move when your knees bend, but if you feel that little front portion, that's the portion that you're talking about.
Right through there, yeah.
And it's kind of squishy, and then you get down to obviously the lower leg muscle, lower leg bones, but that little squishy part versus the actual bone, patella / kneecap bone, that's hard. And then if you go further down, so that's what we're talking about. That's the pain. That's where it would be localized.
Yeah, and tendons like Achilles tendon, patella tendon, all the tendons in our body, what they do is they act as like shock absorbers and I suppose load compressors. So they like to actually be under load. They like to take in the pressure. They like to absorb all that energy so that they can throw it back at you, and you get that, I suppose, that propulsion and that sort of energy given back to your muscles in a way, right? Essentially helps obviously relieve tension and pain on your joints. So that's why we've got tendons all the way around near our joints as well. Same as obviously our Achilles, obviously a huge tendon down in our ankle. And the point of it is to help, I suppose, de-stress and deload the pressure that's going through the knee. So what happens most of the time when we talk about runner's knee, or what we call PFPS, or patellofemoral pain syndrome, is the first port of call is almost always overuse. And overuse can be looked at as a few different things. So the classic 8-week programs couch to 42K, whatever that looks like.
Nice.
Almost guaranteed overuse. And I've had a lot of clients that have seen me not only as, I suppose, an athlete for coaching, but also for physio-based stuff, that have gone, hey, I could have gone, or I got told I could do from 0 to 42 in 8 weeks, and this is what my program looked like. And it's funny, and I'll be honest with you, I've seen programs where in the first 2 weeks, their weekly mileage is 10 to 15 kilometers, which in a first couple of weeks, I'm like, not horrible.
Yeah.
That's not too bad, depending on their previous medical history. To run 10Ks in a week for someone who is coming off the couch as a novice runner, that's not too intense, in all fairness. The body can withstand that.
Yeah.
It's when we go week 2 to week 3 and we go from, let's go a 10K week to a 20K week, people look at it and you'll potentially think the same without your running experience. You go, if I had to drive 10 kilometers, that's not bad. If I only had to drive another 10 kilometers, that's actually not too far, right? And that's how we always think kilometers, is we almost always relate it to distance when we drive, because that's what we use it for most of the time.
Yeah.
But if you look at it from running, that's a whole 200% increase as a percentage. So you've just gone, let's do for 2 weeks, we're going to run, our 100% capacity is 10 kilometers. Let's double that in half the time. And then almost let's double that again in a third of the time on top of that. And like I've been saying almost my whole life, the body knows movement. So if you have the mental toughness, all those other things that come into running,
You can probably get through it.
to get you from point A to point B, you can get there. But for a clear example, if you hurt your ankle and you can't step on it, the next thing you do is you limp. So you can still get from the field to your car, but your body doesn't do it efficiently. You limp because the body knows movement. It doesn't know why it's doing it. And the same sort of thing when we're looking at overuse and running and all those sort of things, especially with runner's knee, is it knows that it can run 10 kilometers and then it goes, oh, shit, we can run 20 kilometers. Why can't we? We can run 30, we can run 40, and then it all just stacks up. And you look at, when you break down the numbers, the percentages and all those sort of things, you go, we've just overshocked the system. It's like we've just put a defib right through your knee and just gone, whammed it up and just absolutely gone crazy with everything. And then, God forbid, you throw a heel session in there in your first couple of weeks. You've got heavy leg sessions on top of that, and you've just gone from absolute novice to zero. Let's go completely extreme. Zero experience in the world of running and health and fitness, gym, whatever, to I'm almost running at like a near sub-elite to average Joe type level.
Yeah.
At the drop of a hat. That there, overuse, bam, runner's knee will come straight away. When we've gone from running, let's go 10K flat a week to 10K on the hills, and we've got decent elevation, decent increase in I suppose, gains, all those sort of things, that alone, you're putting the body under a different type of stress that it's not prepared for. Boom, runner's knee, because it's all overuse.
And that's interesting, because as on top of that as well, you're probably going to give yourself other injuries.
Potentially
you could give yourself other injuries as well if you're doing that. That's why we've said on podcasts before, not all programs were created equal. And even I've been through that whole thing where I guess that's the hard thing out there, is trying to trust, and this is completely off the physio topic, is trying to trust who you're buying.
Correct.
Or who you're sourcing your programs for. Because if I try and sell, like for example, if I put out there a program, a 0 to 8K, I gave it to these guys, I've done it myself, and if you have a look at it, it's like 0 to 10K, one 10K run.
Yep.
in 8 weeks, and you're saying there's programs out there saying 0 to 42K. And just thinking about that and building the load over, and it's also the fact that my programming initially for those types of programs are all time-based, and if you're completely new to running, like you obviously had football background, so you were able to run, where some people don't even know how to run.
Yeah.
So they're given that time-based program, and their weekly mileage might be 5Ks versus someone who's run before might have a 15K mileage just because of the time. They're able to cover, well, the distance they're able to cover in that time is completely different.
And I'm the same as, and I love that you make that point. Obviously, I've got footballing background and all the rest of it, but I'm the same as everyone else in this space. When I started out, it was 30 minutes on the legs. Just tick over 30 minutes. It is the proven easiest way to get into running to start. You don't have to think about pace and distance and all that other fancy database stuff.
Yeah.
Just got to run for 30 minutes. Whatever that feels like, great. Next week, it's 35. The week after that, it's 40. And you make those gains there. Speed will come whenever, and pace and yada, yada, yada. That'll always come. But I'm the same as much as anyone else, where it was just like, all right, we're just going to do an hour on the legs today. That's what it is. But also the best way in terms of from an injury perspective, let me ask you this. If you went for a 10K run and let's say you hurt yourself, but you got through the run, and I asked you after the run, at what point did you hurt yourself? What's probably easier for you to remember? The 3K mark or when you hit 15 minutes?
15 minutes.
Usually, most people will have a watch or something that's clocking time before it clocks pace and distance.
Yeah.
So more often than not, even if they start at 3 p.m. and they don't even have a watch or a phone, they start at 3 p.m., they run and they hurt themselves.
They go, it's about 20 minutes into it.
The first thing they go is they're not going to go, oh, I was here. And they might do, but most often than not, the first thing they go is, oh, I was about halfway through the run. I ran for 30 minutes. So I was about the 15-minute mark, roughly. But you're not going to know what distance that is unless you know how fast you're running and all the other metrics. So time is always the best way to go.
Especially, starting out.
100%. Especially when you're looking, because like I said, most people will have this runner's knee-based stuff are almost always beginner-based or newer runners.
Yeah.
And most of the time their program should be time-orientated for that reason. But it also gives you another way to, I suppose, frame it and go, all right, let's run for 30 minutes pain-free. If we can do that, great, from a rehab perspective. So that when I look at someone who's coming back from runner's knee, we'll do maybe a 2-minute on, 1 minute off perspective. Doesn't matter how far you go and how fast it is. You're running for 2 minutes and then you're going to stop and you're going to walk for a minute because it's time orientated. It is always the best way to go, whether it's prehab, rehab, return to running, new to running, always the best, especially with runner's knee-based stuff and making sure you don't fall into the trap of overuse to lead into runner's knee.
And that's because, like you're saying, and someone who is been running for a period of time versus someone who's coming from a couch, if you say to them, go run a kilometre, their kilometre could take 5 minutes, whereas someone from the couch might take 8 minutes. And if you have a look from a loading perspective, that's 8 minutes under load versus 5 minutes under load.
Correct.
And that accumulated over lots of runs coming back from an injury is just going to be...
And then on top of that, an 8-minute run is slower, so it usually means more steps. People don't realize that every time you take a step, you're putting load through your body, so you're more susceptible because you're just taking more steps, period.
That's why I like to run quicker.
Yeah,
anyway.
Don't we all?
Next one, and it might be the last one unless you think of any other real common running injuries that I might have missed. We kind of just want to cover the top 4 is plantar fasciitis. I'm not sure if that's a common one. I think it is. Everyone that I've spoken to that's running has maybe not labelled it, but has been like, oh, what the fuck is that?
Pain in my foot.
Pain when I wake up in the morning.
Yep.
Oh, it's gone after a couple of hours.
Yeah. So plantar fascia is obviously a painful sensation or a stressful sensation that we feel it. Some people feel it in a few different areas, and whether that's pure plantar fascia or a little bit referral, it's always going to be hard to tell. But usually it's at the base of the heel and leading into, I suppose, the arch base of your foot, right? For most people, they sort of feel it for one of two reasons. They're flat-footed, so the arch in their foot, they don't really have an arch in their foot. And when you don't have an arch in your foot, other structures have to work harder to help support the intrinsics of your foot, but also the other ligaments around that from a structural perspective to compress and take in the load when we are running.
Yeah.
So on a pure basic level, if you've got flat feet and you don't have, I suppose, shoes to support that, you're running in a particular certain way that's putting stress on other structures that are going to lead to overall pathology, what we call plantar fascia in the base of that heel, where a lot of structures meet at a border and where there's a lot of tendons and foot intrinsics going on, where it's just a pressure point, in all fairness. It is a challenging one to just tell a client with 100% certainty, this is plantar fascia, without something else potentially being of cause and effect leading into it.
What's the main type of thing to? I know what I did, but what's
combat?
To combat that and to, I guess, get rid of it.
Yeah. At the end of the day, like I said, all patients are different, but standard sort of thing is that I would, I suppose, prescribe my people is a lot of foot-based training, which I don't think a lot of people really.
What do they call that? Oh, we did this at we did like shoes off, socks off type stuff. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, 100%.
We walked on the outside of our foot, walked on the inside, walked on our toes, walked on our heels.
Yeah, for sure. And
well, is there a name for that?
Well, not that would be on the top of my head, but at the end of the day, people don't actually realize our feet are the one thing between us and earth that keep us grounded and keep us moving, right?
Except for your mum.
So, but why do we not train them?
Yeah.
Why do we not take care of them the way that we should? So training foot intrinsics, so strengthening up the muscles that are actually on the base of our foot underneath, so making sure that they're able to withstand power, pressure, compression, load, all those other things. Training the arches of our foot and the other musculature that goes into the arches of our foot, tib post, tib ant, all those other, I suppose, structures around it, strengthening tendons and ligaments, the Achilles, all those other cofactors involved, so that if we put it in a simple term, every time you take a step, everything's getting treated pressure-wise equally, as opposed to all that pressure just going on the base of your foot or to the arch of your foot, to the lateral component of your heel, because we've got weakness elsewhere. That would be, it's a well-winded way to do it, but self-massage is always a good way as well if there is pain and stress in those locations. A little bit of basic moisturizer just running through the arches of your foot and through the base of the heel. You can go down orthotics and types of shoes, and there are shoes that are more specific for what we call overpronators, so they'll roll in on their arches, which is more likely to happen with someone with plantar fascia.
Because patient specific was, for me, I had it in one side, and then they did a simple calf raise test and noticed that the side that had plantar fasciitis was a lot weaker during that test. Like, let's say, for example, I don't remember, I could do 40 on one side and then 20 on the other. And then obviously that would play, I'm assuming that would play some sort of role in the plantar fasciitis being there. So obviously did a lot of calf raises, no plantar fasciitis now. Does overuse play a role in plantar fasciitis?
It can do. In most experiences, it is, like you say, is more weakness based.
Yeah.
But it's sort of, they've got a partnership in the way that, if you think of it this way, if you are weaker in one part of your body, let's go left and right bicep, right? Just keep it pure, simple, and basic. If you're weaker in one part of your body, but you train the same level, let's go your right stronger than your left, and you train 10 reps on your right and 10 reps on your left, your left isn't getting as strong as your right. So your right's just continually going to exponentially grow more than your left. You put that in terms of, let's go calves, same thing. If for whatever reason you've always been right side dominant, or if you played, let's go with me, played football, so I was always a left foot kicker, so my right leg being my standing leg could always take in more load and more pressure, because it was just always grounded, and that was its role in that specific movement. So my right calf is always bigger and always stronger. So my left is weaker, but because it can't keep up with my right, we're overusing it to get up to that same sort of level, as opposed to potentially maybe what we need to do is train our left twice a week and our right once a week and slowly progress that improvement over time.
So the weakness is causing the overuse rather than
leading into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then obviously the more we go through that, we take 10,000 steps when we run and all those other things. We're doing the same amount of work on both, but one's got the ability to withstand it. The other doesn't.
Yeah.
You do that over 3, 4, 5 weeks, or whatever that threshold is where your leg goes, nah, this is enough for me, plantar fascia, here we go. Then that sort of kicks in. Then it just becomes, like you said, the majority of your rehab is strengthening based.
Yeah.
And getting it back so that when we are using our muscles, we're using them coherently together or concurrently together, so that we're not using one more than the other and we're not having that imbalance or that over versus underuse.
Are there any early signs for plantar fasciitis?
Pain.
Like, besides the pain, because I know I forget how it actually started for me, but I do remember that pain in the morning, and then is there? I guess I'm assuming it would just get gradually worse.
Yeah. So even though it was a bit of a joke, but pain is still that first indicator.
Yeah.
And pain, like you said, at times when you usually wouldn't expect or shouldn't expect to feel it. So work an office job, you get up to go for a walk at lunch and you go, oh, okay, that's a bit sore. That sort of, without calling it niggly pain, but that constant sort of dully type, achy type pain that sort of hangs around as well. And then obviously the location, that base of the heel leading into the arch of the foot, are the real genuine main things that stand out. And then we look at, if you want to go deeper into like programming wise and those sort of things, we can obviously pick and prod data and where those sort of things lie. But from a subjective, I just feel what I feel as a patient. Pain will always be that first indicator for me.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's injuries done. That's I guess the top 4 most common injuries I've noticed in people out there. So just a brief overview of what those are. One thing people can start doing today to reduce their chances of injury. One thing, I know which one I'd choose, but...
Oh, interesting. One thing... Oh, God, there's probably about 12 things. One things that people can do... So we're talking...
That the majority
new
of
runners.
New runners, that the majority of them are probably not already doing.
That they're probably not already doing. As a holistic view, because I've got a few different little clinical
Well, I'll tell you my
perspectives.
one. It's probably strength training.
Yep.
That's probably number one.
See, I was even going to dive deeper into that. So even for me, holistically, train as a runner. First and foremost is like, at the end of the day, if you want to run a marathon, you got to train to run a marathon. If it's not your priority, that's fine, and you want to try and do it in the background, that's cool. If you want the result that you're chasing, train to get the result that you want to get. First and foremost, as a general rule of thumb, right?
Yeah.
If we talk strength training, almost the be-all and end-all that I would provide to anyone is seated calf raises for gastroc soleus, and there's whole reasons behind it, but essentially...
That's all I do.
Seated calf raises are awesome because our calves are our main power propulsion element when we come into running, and we need power when we run. So seated calf raises and a lot of load-based work. So whether that's time under tension with obviously squats and deadlifts, all that sort of stuff, but getting the body used to feeling pressure and feeling load, because for anyone who hasn't run a marathon, you'll know just as much as I do, there comes a point, and everyone talks about the 32K wall. There's about 10 walls that come before that. We're just a little bit more prepped in that sort of way to get by them. But there's a wall that probably hits every 2 or 3 Ks or every 5 Ks, but you're equipped for it. But you go, all right, the body's going on for the next 5 Ks. Are we strong enough to do it? Yes, tick, cool. And we've just got to train our body to be strong enough to withstand that load and that pressure. And seated calf raise, number one. Any sort of tib ant based work where it's knees over toes sort of orientated, always important.
Whoever told you not to do squats with knees over toes, you're stupid.
Full of it.
So, and I that's just to load up the knee.
Yeah.
In the most simple terms, like it's to load up the knee, because if you're going to get how do I put this? If you're going to get the majority of your loading via running, and what I mean by that is if you're going to stress the most during running, you're going to get injured, personally. So you should be stressing it in the gym further than you would. I mean position wise, like
Correct.
you're not going to
Mechanics wise.
You're not going to be doing a full flex of the knee where your heel is touching your bum during a marathon, unless you're running really fast, because I'm assuming at that pace you're not going to pick up the heel as much. And if you go look at runners, unless you're sprinting, you're not going to be going through I don't know what it's called, but like the full gait in terms of everything's. How do I put this? I guess it's just different running mechanics for different people.
You're right though. The running cycle at different speeds does look different, and you break down any sprinter, and there is always almost a phase where the knee runs over the toes. And, I mean, I've got screenshots on my phone that I send to my clients and stuff of the elite marathon runners where every time their foot is in a position, their toes are dorsiflexed, like their ankles dorsiflexed up, which means your toes are towards your face. In that heightened position, the knees are over the toes, and you're getting ready to compress and put load through those structures each and every step. And that's running at a 250 to 310 pace. But the quicker we want to get, the more we need to get in that sort of space. And it doesn't matter if you're going from an 8 to a 7 minute, 7 to a 6.
Yeah.
The more or the quicker we want to get, the more we're going to put our body under stress, and we need to adapt and be ready for it.
Yeah.
In any way, shape or form. Heart, lungs, joints, muscles, you name it.
Yeah. Anyway, we've got one more.
Yeah.
To wrap it up, we have a tip of the week each week. The tip of the week I'm going to leave over to you is, what questions should patients ask a physios that you've had a question from a patient, be like, oh, I wish that's actually smart that they've actually come to me and asked it. Because I think sometimes, like you're saying, patients come in and just kind of let the physio take it away. And is there a question that patients should be asking physios to, I guess, help with their
rehab,
injuries or
recovery,
rehab,
whatever it is?
all that?
A good one that I try and ask when I'm in this position as well is a little bit outside of the box, is what else can I be doing?
How quick can I get back running?
But what else can I be doing? Not necessarily from a physiological point of view.
Yeah.
But what else can I be doing in the meantime to help me get the results I want to get? Because at the end of the day, and there's this incredible quote that Chris Williamson goes over and stuff, is that when you're at the start line of any race, every runner's goal is the same. Get to the start line. Get to the finish line, sorry.
That's our name, finish line formula.
So that's the end goal. Every runner, if we're at the same start line,
You've got to the start line. You've ticked that box.
Our goal is the same. Get to the finish line.
Yeah.
Who gets there first, or who gets there more efficiently, or gets there quicker, whichever way you want to put it, is who has the right processes and systems in place to achieve that goal.
Yeah.
And what people don't realize is that when you see a physio, whether you like it or not, you're at a position of a start line, and there is a finish line where we want to get you. And your start line might be a little bit different to someone else's, but let's just go 2 people with runner's knee, and they're the same sort of level of capacity, same sort of mileage per week, all the very similar clients, similar patients. Their finish line is still, I want to run my marathon pain-free. It's the person who comes in and goes, what else can I be doing? And where else can I be adding value to my processes and my systems to get to that finish line? They're the ones that are going to excel and exceed in their recovery in that rehab process than the next. So what else can I be doing? I can journal my injury process each day, so I know what I'm feeling, being proactive in that sort of
You can use Strava even for that.
There's so many outlets for it, so many outlets. But they're the person that goes, what else can I be doing? What more can be done? Where do I fit in this recovery process? And what's the next stage? How do I get there the best way possible? And what do I need to implement to do that? So if you're ever going to ask your physio anything, absorb all the knowledge they give you, take on all the exercises, modalities, you name it. But at the end of every appointment, you go, what else can I be doing to benefit my result?
What else can I be doing?
And if there's nothing in that space, no harm in asking anyway.
What else can I be doing? The one question, if you took anything from this episode, take that.
Yeah.
And on your next appointment with Corey, he's about to plug his stuff.
100%.
Ask him that question. He'll know, and he'll give you 10% discount because you listened to the episode. I'm kidding.
I'll take care of it.
Anyway, we're wrapping up here part 2 from the sunny Gold Coast. Joined here for part 2. Thank you, Corey. We'll have his stuff down in the bio, but we're going to plug his stuff one more time. Take it away.
So for anyone who obviously wants to find me, Instagram is the best way to get in contact with me. My Instagram handle is Finding Corey. Obviously, you'll know it's me because it's physio everything, pretty much running everything as well, and it's all black and white, so you can't really miss me. My business page, Fixed Focus Performance, website incoming, all that other fun stuff as well. But literally, hit me up on Instagram. Any questions, queries, concerns, we can take care of that. Email out to me, whatever you need. And yeah, just excited if anyone does want to work with me. What we can do to help you get to your goals.
Perfect. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Been a pleasure talking to you. I believe you'll get a lot out of this. But yeah, would love to know your comments. Send us a DM or whatever, and we're gonna head back to the studio to wrap things up.
Legend.
See you
Appreciate
later.
it. Thanks for having us.
And we're back. We just finished my sit down with Corey, part 2 of a 2-part series, because that's what happens when you got part 2. There's usually part 1. Part 1 was last week. Hopefully you checked that out. Part 2, we sat down and discussed all running specific injuries that you probably have gone through. So hopefully you took something away. Share this with someone if they are going through something similar, because most likely they'll benefit from something we talked about. Anyway, we're going to wrap this one up. You can find us at all big online platforms that distribute podcasts. Our socials, personal and Finish Line Formula, will be in the description below. We've got 2 weeks to go. We're going to jump on next week, and we're not sure what we're going to talk about. Maybe a race strategy. Who knows?
Yeah, it's race. I've already decided it's race strategy that we'll be discussing next week. So yeah. Calm down there, Zoolander.
Okay, so we're going to be discussing race strategy. You heard it here first. Next week, we'll see you soon. Laters. Peace. Bye.